Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator, and welcome back to Total Party Skills. I had put a little poll up on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Party Skills, just to kind of put some feelers out as to what my small amount of viewers so far might actually like to see for my next video review. And I had a couple different options, and it was a draw between Savage Rifts and the classic West End game Star Wars role-playing game. And because I feel like there's a lot more I have to say about Savage Rifts and how it compares to the original, both positive and negative, I decided I'd get Star Wars out of the way. So, the copy I have is the 30th Anniversary Edition. It's the exact original West End Games rules. It also comes with a nice source book, which is very necessary because it has a lot of your statistics for most of your common vehicles, weapons, starships, fighter ships, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of this game, it is possibly the best science fiction role-playing game as an entry-level game in the way that D&D is for fantasy. I say that because its pop culture popularity makes it much easier for a new player to be able to visualize what everything looks like and understand the kinds of character tropes that they're to be portraying. In fact, as a document, it stands at the root of a lot of the lore that is out there about Star Wars. It was a common reference point for a lot of the classic, I guess what they call the Legends books now, although it just used to be the expanded universe. It all traceable back to here. People who had this book back in the day and were familiar with it were like not at all surprised by some of the plot elements of the Star Wars prequel trilogy. In fact, I would dare say that it's easier to understand what's going on, especially with Palpatine and the background of the story of those. It's easier to understand those movies if you're familiar with the lore presented in this classic book. Now, Wizards of the Coast had put out an edition of Star Wars right around the time the prequels were coming out. I had a copy of that, although I never ran it. It basically just used the D&D rule set, the D20 style characters, and it seemed serviceable. I've not, for disclosure's sake, looked at any of the more recent versions of Star Wars. Because they have it split off into so many little sub-games, that's a little unattractive. Just in terms of like the amount of stuff you have to buy and the price point they put on all these things. Although there's angles to having like more narrowly focused presentations of the setting, so you can have a more tightly focused campaign. I do see some advantage to that, but I can't speak to what those games are because I haven't even looked at them. I'm just talking about this, the original, the classic, the beautiful West End Games game. Now, its rule system is real simple. It's basically just, character creation is choose a template, assign a few skill points. It's a simple mechanic of you have a dice pool to roll of a variable amount of 6-sided die, and it only uses 6-sided die. You just got to roll and beat a difficulty number. Easy to understand, easy to play. The book itself is set roughly around the time of Episode 4, maybe between Episode 4 and Episode 5. Because chunks of it do reference the destruction of the first Death Star and all that, but pretty much for all classic era and like immediate aftermath of Return of the Jedi, the material covered in this book is perfectly usable. And since that seems to be the best era for Star Wars, just in terms of the amount of media that's been spun off of it over the years. You can make worse choices, obviously, for where to set your Star Wars game. Now, I don't know, what are the negatives to this? Finding copies right now, that's kind of the issue. Like I said, this is the 30th Anniversary Edition. I bought it a couple years ago, and at the time, it was like $30. I just looked on Amazon before making this video to see what it's currently priced at, and they're selling them now for about $60 in US dollars. And I'm sure you can find them on eBay. You might even be able to find copies of the original rule books, not the 30th Anniversary editions. But quality control on that kind of stuff is iffy, and pricing can be all over the map. So if you're interested in playing the old school Star Wars, trying it out, It's not just like for the older gamers. This is a perfectly functional entry-level role-playing game. Like I said, it's just as good as D&D, but it applies to science fiction. Easy to get your head around, easy to come up with adventures, really easy to improvise. Several of like my favorite memories of role-playing from when I was a kid 30 years ago were involved this game. Unfortunately, Drive-Thru RPG does not seem to have like any old West End Star Wars supplements available even on PDF. I don't know how much that has to do with the menacing shadow of the Dark Lord Disney, but that certainly could be a thing. I don't know. I mean, there is like an opening, a little word by Pablo Hidalgo, which I know depending on what sector of the fandom you're in, that might be controversial to you, but who cares? You can skip past that page. Just in terms of just a solid, simple game. I mean, also, like, most game books nowadays, they require so many supplements, and the books are also thick. It's just nice to occasionally go back and see how thin these things were. They didn't over-explain everything. They assumed that the people who were buying these books to run these games had some amount of imagination and ability to come up with stuff to do and knew the setting. So, I don't know, it's refreshing. It's a solid buy, it's a solid read. And, yeah. What else, though? This is not something that's as easy to find. If you want to get a copy of it, you're going to have to look around. But there is also their best source book that they had, which is the Dark Empire source book. Which is basically, if you want to, have a Star Wars role-playing game set in a much better version of Rise of Skywalker, if you can find a copy of this, it's good times. So anyway, I guess that's about all I have to say. I mean, there's very little controversial about this version of Star Wars. Beyond just that, I highly recommend it. Either if you're an older player of my age group and you just want to have a nice flashback. I mean, considering that the OSR and old school gaming is such a thing right now, I would think that also there would be some degree of people like looking back at the non-D20, the non-Dungeons and Dragons games that existed back in the day as also being something to look into in terms of resurrecting those old rule systems. I noticed Savage Worlds kind of draws a few elements of its rules designed from this, as well as it does from a few other games, but this is definitely influential to that. And as I say, just as like a product that is part of the continuity of how Star Wars has evolved in and of itself, outside of just role-playing games, but Star Wars itself, this is a key component to its evolution. So as a relic of the past, even if you're not into role-playing games, it still wouldn't necessarily hurt to crack it open and give it a look. So anyway, as I say, that's all I got to say. Can I say again? I don't know. What do you say? Hit like and subscribe. Say something rude in the comments below. Follow me on Twitter. Turn this video off. Find something better to do with your time. Watch politically heated YouTube videos. Fall down a rabbit hole. It's your weekend, it's your life. Do what you want. Have a good one.